The town of Certaldo, southwest of Florence, is home to a wonderful museum of sacred art, located in what was once a 15th century convent between the Palazzo Pretorio and Boccaccio house. In order to preserve important artworks and religious objects from local churches, the town gathered them here, where you can view them at your own leisure as you move through the museum's 7 rooms. In the first room, you'll find paintings and fresco fragments from the 13th to the 16th centuries. As you walk around, you'll get to witness the beginning of the Renaissance period in European art. Renaissance literally means rebirth, the rebirth of the knowledge and ideals of the ancient world after a prolonged period of cultural, scientific and artistic decline in the Middle Ages. And you can see this change happening in this very room. From one painting to another, you can see the shift from the medieval Italo-Byzantine style to the Renaissance style. It's even easier to see the progression here because many of the paintings depict the same subject, the Madonna and Child, very popular in medieval and Renaissance art. Notice the lack of emotion in the earlier paintings. Figures are flat and cartoon-like, whereas in later paintings, images are three-dimensional, more real. You can see that some objects are clearly closer to the viewer or further away, that Mary has a bosom and a more womanly shape, that Jesus is more innocent-looking, resembling an actual chubby baby rather than a mini-adult. What a wonderful place to witness the Renaissance. The other rooms of the museum contain marvelous collections of goldwork, church vestments, and other artifacts, also great examples of the profound change enacted by the Renaissance. But the Renaissance also greatly changed how people lived. Like most convents of that time, this building has its own hortus conclusus, which is Latin for enclosed garden. Gardens have been a mark of civilization for thousands of years. In the Eastern civilizations of Egypt, Persia, Mesopotamia, and Babylon, people took inspiration from the oasis, the haven of desert nomads, and built walled places where they could pass time among fragrant fruit trees and pleasant pools. Medieval Europeans borrowed the idea and made their own haven of civilization within nature, the hortus conclusus. The term hortus conclusus, or enclosed garden, first came up in the Bible's Song of Songs, where King Solomon compares his bride to a garden enclosed, a fountain sealed up. In response, the bride calls for the wind to blow upon her garden and invites Solomon to dine there with her. As you might have already guessed, the images of the garden enclosed and the fountain sealed up are metaphors for the ideal chaste and unsullied female. The act of dining in the garden represents the consummation of their marriage. So this garden motif became a frequent subject in medieval and Renaissance art and literature. Hence, hortus conclusus is typically depicted with the Virgin Mary in it. We usually see her in or near a walled garden, which implies the impenetrability of her womb. It's closed off and untouched, protected by walls from the evil of the outside world. As you might imagine, the concept of the hortus conclusus took on a life beyond art and soon became a standard for cloisters. You have to remember that the early medieval period, from the late 5th to the 10th century AD, was very chaotic. The Western Roman Empire had fallen. Famine, war, plague were everywhere, making trade very difficult and unprofitable. People left towns for the countryside, so the idea that towns represented civilization and countryside represented the wilderness became less true. Out of all this chaos, only the church and religion were really able to create order. Monasteries in the countryside sprang up, monks planted gardens, and these gardens visually attested to the ability of human beings and religion to organize chaos into order. Often these gardens had a well or a fountain, which was not only a source of water, but also a powerful symbol alluding to the fountain of life, in which one is baptized and thus reborn with Christ. Private residences soon started adding enclosed gardens too. Manuscript illustrations show us numerous enclosed gardens being lovingly tended to and enjoyed by people reading, playing music, strolling around, and breathing in the sense of nature. Indeed, with its medicinal herbs and aromatic flowers, doesn't this garden smell just heavenly? Boccaccio, the famous 14th century author of the Decameron, who once lived next door, stated in a letter that could have been written here, "I have returned to Certaldo, and here I have begun, with much less difficulty than I had thought possible, to comfort my life, and the rough clothes and the peasant fare are beginning to please me. In the absence of the ambitions and the unpleasantness and annoyances of our town dwellers is of such consolation to my heart that, could I remain without hearing anything of them, I do believe that my repose would increase greatly." Spend a few moments here, unplug from the world outside the garden walls, and you'll feel the same as Boccaccio.